Welcome to Shooting Straight with A1F.com. I'm Frank Miniter, the editor-in-chief of the NRA's America's First Freedom. Today we have the great pleasure of speaking with Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson of North Carolina. Now, Mark, I hope you don't mind. I'd like to start this with a pretty softball question, but it's one that intrigues me, and I think it intrigues a lot of people when they meet you and they see you and they see you speak, especially. You come onto the stage, and you did right from the beginning in 2018 at the Greensboro City Council with such power and honesty that just resonates so deeply. How did you learn this way of speaking, or is this just innate to you?
Well, first off, thank you for letting me be here today. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't really know how to answer that. I guess, before 2018, I had never given a speech where I didn't have note cards or something prepared. I was brought up in a way that's the way you present a speech. And that first impromptu speech that I did back in 2018, I just suddenly discovered that I had this talent for speaking without preparation, so to speak, without, what do they call it, extemporaneously. And so we've just been doing it ever since. And it's just something that's just of talent. And we give all the credit to him for allowing us to have the ability to be able to do it.
Well, I think you're being, of course, very, very honest, but there's something there. I think it's honesty that's what gets you there. I think a lot of people are afraid to stand up and say what they really believe, what there really is true. For example, when I saw you speak at the NRA's annual meetings in Houston last May at the NRA ILA Leadership Forum, you stood up there, and before you even came on stage, the people around me already knew who you were excited to listen to you. I think they were more excited, and no disrespect to Mr. Trump, but I think they were more excited to hear from you, or at least as much so, when you came onto that stage. And then you went on the stage and you said, when I look at my grandchildren, I'm reminded of why our framers put it in our Constitution that in this nation, you are not the second responder, you are the first responder. I mean, that is just cutting right to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that in this country, the way this country was formed, our laws, our Constitution gives the men and women of this nation, the free men and women of this nation, it allows them to have the ability to be able to protect themselves, their home, their families. And that does not need to be infringed. I firmly believe that we need to go after criminals with everything that we have. We need to be proactive in fighting crime and proactive against fighting those who would abuse the privilege of being able to own a firearm. But it just should not come at the behest of limiting the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. I believe that in this nation, we're smart enough to figure out how to do both at the same time.
Yes, sir. And then you said, everybody says, what do we do? The answer is not simple, but there is a simple starting point, and here it is. Secure our schools.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you go back and you look. After 9/11, what did we do? We secured the airports and the cockpits. After President Kennedy was killed, what did we do? We secured the president inside of a limousine, no longer allow the open top car. These things, when we learn these lessons, we realize that copycats will come along. Unfortunately, we did not do that with Columbine. Columbine should have been the starting point for us to evaluate the safety and security of our schools. And the very first conversation we should have had is, how do we protect our children in our schools? From my point of view, we still have not had that healthy conversation. We talk about mental health, which we need to. We talk about, getting guns out of the criminals' hands. We need to. But the very first thing that we need to do to stop these tragedies is figure out how we secure those schools. We did it with the president. We've done it with the airports and the cockpits and the airplanes. We can do it with our children in schools, and the process needs to start.
Right. The solution is, in that respect, is basic: hardening our schools,
Absolutely.
arming our teachers if they want to take on that. I mean, it's not something, of course, you want to force the teacher into. But if they have the wherewithal to do that and are willing to do the training and whatever's necessary, then why not? make them a first responder for us. I think to the gentleman who stood up for the people around him in a little mall in Indiana, and stop that bad guy, as has happened before in this country. When I think of the American citizen and what we can do, so it makes me. I guess it doesn't make me wonder. I know enough about it, but it disturbs me that there's a lot of people out there, and I'm sure you're confronting this, who think the solution is to disarm the good guys.
Absolutely. And we could not allow that to happen. And here's why. There are a lot of people, a lot of well-meaning people out there who have spoken and said, we don't need to have AR-15s. We don't, we need to limit magazine capacities. And I believe that a lot of those people are misguided, but well-meaning. But I also believe there's a certain class of politician and a certain class of elitists who believe that we should not have those weapons for more nefarious reasons. When you take a look at what's going on our southern border, the southern border right now is wide open. And sure, there are lots of people. Most of those people who are coming across that southern border are simply coming here to take advantage of the opportunities that we have in this country to work and make a better life. But along with those people, there's a lot of bad people coming across that border. And there's the potential for even more when you look at some of these nation states that hate us and now have the ability to have weapons to come through there and do bad things. You take a look at MS-13 and others that are coming across that border. And then you take a look at the lawlessness that we saw a couple of years ago across the country that was simply allowed by a lot of the leftist politicians. They didn't stop these people from burning up police stations and burning federal buildings and destroying private businesses. And then you have to stop and ask yourself, why do you need an AR-15? I think the answer is plain and simple. We need those weapons to be able to defend ourselves against governments that grow out of control and refuse to protect its citizens.
Right, and crime rates are still much too high in New York and Los Angeles and in places across the country. Yet they're blaming us. They're blaming the 100 million or 100 plus million armed citizens in this nation for this problem. It most clearly is not. It's cashless bail and so on. When you come across that, when you speak to your constituents, how do you address that? How do you explain that to them, that it's actually woke prosecutors and so on that are doing this?
It's simple. These leftists with their bad policies. Leftists come along, they're elected in office, they place these bad policies in place. Once these bad policies start to take effect and the awful effects of these bad policies start showing, then they turn right around and blame it on conservatives. It blows my mind when you have Democrat-run cities, leftist Democrat-run cities, and these folks are blaming their issues on the conservatives who are not in charge in these places. Conservatives actually have the answers and have had the answers for many decades as to how to solve these issues. And these people have completely turned their backs on wise counsel. They have adhered to this policy that is destroying their cities, and they're pointing in the wrong direction, misdirection, saying it's the conservatives' fault, it's the Trump supporters' fault, it's the NRA's fault. No, it is the fault of the lousy leftist politician and their sorry policy that are allowing criminals to run roughshod over law-abiding citizens. And that's what the people of this country have got to stand up and push back against.
I'm a New Yorker, and I'm from an area of New York that is pretty conservative. You get far enough upstate, and it is. Any state is complicated like that when you really start to dig into it. Yes. But our senators and so on are not necessarily picked by the conservative base that's even in this state, which puts you in this troubled position. And I know, being a New Yorker, a lot of gun owners here, a lot of recent gun owners here have come to ask me how to get training, what guns should they buy, and so on, who are lifelong Democrats. And I hate calling them lifelong Democrats in this context, because this should be a nonpartisan issue, and not that long ago Absolutely. Was a nonpartisan issue. It's our freedom. It's a civil right, a civil liberty. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. So I'm wondering, in North Carolina, or as you travel across the country, are you hearing more that this is becoming or should be a nonpartisan issue?
It absolutely is. And it's one of those issues that is breaking the stronghold that the left has had on minorities. Minorities are waking up and starting to see that, some of the bad things that go on in their neighborhoods, it's going to be up to them to protect themselves and their families, and they want to be armed. When you remind folks about the old days of groups like the Ku Klux Klan and others that would maraud at night and come in with their weapons and attack defenseless people, when folks are reminded of that, they think, hey, the Second Amendment is not just in there just for a certain class of people or a certain group of people. It's in there for all Americans. And I think this is one of the linchpin issues that's going to help finally break the stranglehold that the left has on minorities, because minorities are starting to see, hey, this is for me too. And another big group that I'm also seeing is women. That firearm is the great equalizer. And women are starting to see that although, when you look at it, it looks male dominated. It's not there just for the men. It's there for women also. So this is an issue that I think that's going to sway a lot of people, because the more we see the ludicrous amount of crime and these lax prosecutors and these leftists that are allowing these people to just commit crime after crime, the more people we're going to see taking the issue on for themselves and realizing that when trouble comes to my front door, I am the first responder. So I think we're going to see this be a linchpin issue.
Right. The police, God bless them, are minutes away at best.
Yes.
Whereas,
when seconds count.
Yep, seconds count. You're right there. Absolutely. And about what the NSSF says, about 40% of new gun purchasers are women. They're standing
Absolutely.
up for their individual rights and so on. So given those demographic changes that are happening within gun ownership, even though they've always been there, this has hardly been what the far left characterizes as gun ownership in this country. It's always been a very diverse group that has owned firearms in this nation.
Sure.
But given that, as we're heading into a midterm election, are you hopeful that freedom will win?
I am, very much so. And here's why. A lot of people are seeing the reversal of fortune that we have experienced in the last 2 years. When we had an America First president, when we had someone who was using conservative principles inside our federal government, things were firing on all cylinders. And now we are seeing a complete reversal of that. We're seeing someone who refuses to protect our southern border. We're seeing the effects of that with gangs and drugs. We saw someone who absolutely fumbled the ball in Afghanistan and embarrassed us on the world stage and set us in a position where we're even worse off now than we were 20 years ago, because not only have we given the Taliban back Afghanistan, we also gave them billions of dollars of equipment to use against us in the future. And we're seeing the dreadful effects of a president that obviously cannot run an economy. We're seeing the $5 a gallon for gas because he's running our energy needs based on climate change science, which is junk. And we're seeing the fact that this man doesn't even understand what a recession is. So I think this November, all of those things are going to come into play. And I think people are going to say, hey, we need to return back to where we were, because where we were was in a good place. I'll take $2 a gallon gas and mean tweets all day long.
Right. President Joe Biden blames American freedom for criminal activity, for the criminal class in our society.
Yes.
It's just completely outrageous. And I'm hopeful as well that people will see through that.
I believe they will. There's enough frustration to go around in every sector, whether it be the economy, whether it be education, whether it be the border, whether it be the freedom issues like the Second Amendment, whether it be the abortion issue. All those issues are coming into play, and there are people out there that are ready to get to the polls to help start the process to turn things around once again.
Now, I remember when we first spoke, you said education was your number one priority in North Carolina. That's what you wanted to accomplish. And as we look at our state of education, I went to school in New York in a public school system, and they certainly didn't teach me about the fundamentals of my individual rights. So I understood and had the basis for that stuff. I had to learn that later, and mostly on my own. How are you bringing it to schools, or what are you accomplishing there?
Well, the first thing that we have to do with our public schools is unpack who the players are and how the system actually runs. And we're right in the midst of that right now. Here in North Carolina, we have some pretty sad statistics to report. We have a $26 billion budget, and we spend half of that budget on education, a little more than half of it on education. And now, quite frankly, our children can't read on a grade level. That's an F. That is an F. We are failing our children miserably. And I believe one of the reasons why we're failing our children miserably is because we have an education bureaucracy that is more interested in protecting itself and more interested in protecting its status quo than it is in actually administering education in a way that are going to make children successful in the classroom and where that will parlay to when they leave the classroom. And that's where we got to get education back to. And I believe that we have some talented folks here in North Carolina that if we put them in the right positions, we can start the process to return public education to where it needs to be. Plus, there's also that linchpin issue of school choice, putting parents at the helm of deciding where and how their children are educated and allowing competition to exist so that the public school cannot just be a monopoly. We have got to allow parents to decide where their children are going to go to school.
Well, imagine that a school system, especially a public school system, that teaches patriotism in a way. I mean, not that they're going to go in and just shout patriotism, but teaches the idea that the individual liberty, what has risen this country up, what has made this country so great, a shining light upon this world, is still there. And it's being dimmed by some people, but it's still there to be polished up and shine so it can shine bright again.
Yes. Well, here's the thing. I don't think we need to, I don't think we have to teach our children to be patriots. Here's what we need to do. We need to teach our children how to be successful under capitalism and how to operate under our constitutional republic. Teach them about their rights. Teach them about their economy and how to be successful in it. If you teach them how the supercomputer of America works, of how the supercomputer of the United States works, they will grow to love it automatically because they will see its beauty and they will see its function and they will see the fruits of it in their lives. Right now, we are not doing that. We're not teaching our children about our economy, how to work in our economy. We're not teaching our children about their founding documents and about their constitution and about their individual liberties. We're filling their heads with a bunch of socialist junk that's turning them against this nation. I say it all the time. It's like giving somebody the world's greatest supercomputer, but not showing them how to operate it. If you don't show them how to operate it, they're going to get frustrated, they're going to hate it, and they're going to want something else. We got to start teaching our children how to operate the supercomputer of the United States of America and how to operate in it so they'll once again love it.
Right, let that individual empowerment that freedom is, show them their dreams and let them head toward them without the obstacles put in place unfortunately, by too many of our institutions right now.
That's exactly right.
Beautiful thing. So, Lieutenant Governor, where can people contact you, find out more about you?
You can find me on all social media platforms. You can find me at Mark Keith Robinson on Facebook. You can find me at Mark Robinson for NC on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram. Just look for Mark Robinson. It'll pop right up. And I don't know if I can mention this or not, but I also have a book coming out. September 13th will be the release date of our book. It's called We Are the Majority. It's an autobiography. I chronicle my entire life from the time I was a child all the way up to right now. And that'll be available for purchase. Well, it's actually available for purchase on pre-order, but it will be released on September 13th.
Well, sir, that makes me a little frustrated with it because I don't have a copy to review in America's First Freedom. And we're behind. We're already looking at October issue. We're past your book launch date. This is important stuff.
Yeah, well, we will have those books available here on the 13th. I was sent 2 advanced copies by the publisher. They look really nice, and we're super excited about it. So we'll make sure we get you a signed copy.
We'll get it out there in the magazine and on the website just as soon as we get it from you.
You got it. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much.